All right. There's some serious music there. It's David Fathead Newman and James Clay. How would you like to go through life? And he was very proud. Everybody who knew him knew he was very proud of his nickname, Fathead. And he just made himself so distinguished with that name given to him by his peers. That song, that tune is titled Some Kind of Mean. So David Fathead Newman and James Clay. It's the debut album for saxophonist or saxophonist and flautist James Clay, and the second for David Fathead Newman. This was recorded in 1960, and I like that era's music. It has a special energy about it. You also have Wynton Kelly on piano, Sam Jones on bass, and Art Taylor on drums. This is Leid Stories. I'm Yatrice Leid, and everything seems to be going to hell out here. What's going on? I think I'm going to try and see if I can find a flight to somewhere where nobody goes and just stay there until I get a signal that the craziness is over. You could come back and pick up from where you left off. But somehow, I don't think that's happening. It's not going to happen. So it was wishful thinking, and that's the end of that, too. I hope you're doing well out there. I hope you're keeping it together. We have no choice. So we just have to pull through. We just have to make up our minds that this is to be expected. And even more crazy things are coming our way, I'm sure. But don't get too frazzled. It's okay to be a little frazzled, but at the same time, keep in mind, these are, in fact, the United States. And bizarreness is, the name of the game. It's either ramped up or it's tamped down, but it is the norm. So there we are. Okay, what are we talking about today? I wanted to talk about a news conference yesterday, which indicated a kind of special or preferential treatment, and it was a very interesting reaction that it caused. The question is, why do so many people, especially people of color, why do they have so many doubts about the COVID-19 vaccine? The coronavirus, as you know, continues its murderous rampage across the nation, even as newly developed vaccines are being rolled out for mass distribution. A data center at Johns Hopkins University that serves as an international repository for COVID-19 statistics recorded reports of 15.5 million cases in the United States, plus an additional 221,000 new cases of COVID-19 nationwide, and 289,000 plus an additional 2,630, as of yesterday, deaths. This thing is just sweeping through the country. But yesterday was meant to be a high watermark, or in any event, a watermark. You'll see. A news conference hosted by the National Urban League and featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, a senior health advisor to President-elect Joe Biden, launched a special outreach effort targeting people of color generally, and specifically, I should say, but African Americans in particular. It coincided, incidentally, and not so incidentally, with the vaccine rollout. So you could say in a way that African Americans and people of color generally got, quote, preferential treatment yesterday, but not in a bad way. But the question is why. It's clear that there's this very special effort to reach communities of color, but particularly African Americans. Why? Let's hear what you have to say. Well, here's what you're thinking. I want to know what you're thinking about that. Do you ever think about that? Did it cross your mind that this is, making such a strong effort, a pronounced effort, a clear effort by the president-elect and his administration to say, this is a special outreach that we're making to communities of color generally and to African Americans particularly with respect to the administration's attitude toward the virus and its impact in these communities. Why is that? Do you have any ideas? Call 888-874-4888. You know, it's not a usual thing that we see an administration or any governmental body making such a pronounced effort to do something. And particularly if that something is to be associated with the benefits to these communities that they're reaching out to. But there's something very special to be noted here. And I wondered whether it crossed your mind. 888-874-4888. Let's see. Let's see who gets the answer. There are many, but the main answer here is, what is accounting for this aggressive outreach? Is it good? Is it bad? It is what it is. But in any event, there was no doubt that this was a major effort being made to reach out to communities of color, particularly the African American community, with regard to the administration's approach that it says it needs to communicate that there is a special approach that they're taking with this community as regards the coronavirus. 888-874-4888. Ed from Jamaica, you start us off today. Hello? You're on the air.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, there was some type of interference when somebody was singing, actually. You're getting a lot of trouble with your phone lines. I don't know. Maybe they're out to get you.
Yeah, but I heard somebody singing, but I thought you just have happy people where you are.
Well, there's happy people, but they're not singing at this moment.
Okay.
Yeah, how you doing?
Okay.
You know where I'm at with this. I think you already know. I don't trust this government. I believe as African Americans, we've been guinea pigs of the medical industrial complex in this country for years. from the Tuskegee experiments to pollution to other testings and even stealing of our cellular structure in some cases and using it for patents. So yes, I believe they're making an express appeal to the African American community specifically because of the lack of trust, and I believe it's warranted. This vaccine is doing something that no vaccine has ever done. It's using messenger RNA to make your DNA, basically turn your cells into a chemical producing agency, and to produce a protein that's supposed to quote unquote warn off this virus. And I've done a lot of research into this, and not to kowtow to Lincoln, but he has raised some points. And I just tell everybody, do your research. This virus, this vaccine is novel. It's new. That's what novel means. And this approach that it's taking is novel. And it's been underwritten. It's been tried it goes back to the HIV scare back in the days. There's a lot of retrovirus work with DNA. And, I don't trust it. I don't trust it. I don't believe in the COVID conspiracy, but there are a lot of things that are suspect about this. And the rush to this Operation Warp Speed, the way this was put out, the way it was tested, the narrow swath of the population that it was tested against. Even now, they're telling you, they're saying in Great Britain that you can't take it if you have certain quote-unquote allergies. Allergic to what? Jonas Salk had the polio virus, and there were years of research and testing before that vaccine, was put out. So, I mean, these are interesting times, but these are also dangerous times. And I don't trust it.
You don't trust. But it is a very special effort. They put a lot of money into it, lots of attention drawn to it. They're hyping the fact that the vaccine, in the development of the vaccine, African Americans themselves and people from the continent, scientists, were involved in formulating the vaccine, all to allay people's fears, and in order to reverse whatever lingering fears there might be because of the historical record and on African Americans and the medical institutions and what happened to them. Do you think that would accomplish something, or is it more of the same?
I believe it's more of the same. Like, I'm from the old school. My grandmother said to me a long time ago, when someone's telling you not to worry too much, worry. You understand what I'm saying? They are really pushing this thing. And to be totally honest with you, perfect example. Herd immunity was a bad thing in the beginning. Back in March, back in April, herd immunity, Switzerland was doing it. It's ridiculous. Now, herd immunity is a good thing. What is herd immunity? My understanding, herd immunity is that enough people get exposed to the virus, they develop antibodies, they develop an immunity, and immunity gets passed on to the population due to the fact of exposure. How is a vaccine going to increase herd immunity? How is a vaccine a cure? A vaccine is supposed to be a preventative. It's not a cure. Anytime you come up with any type of opposing view or even just intellectual questioning, you're marked a hypocrite, you're marked a conspiracy theorist, you're marked a nut.
So at
like
the moment your position is you're not convinced that there is enough evidence yet that this would be of great benefit specifically to the communities that they're reaching out to with specialized and targeted campaigns.
No, I don't. There's more things that could be done as far as with health benefits, as far as with treatment, as far as with putting money into the communities, as far as providing us with universal health care, than to jump to some type of DNA retrovirus immunization. I don't trust this government. And I have the experience and the record to show you that this government doesn't warrant to be trusted.
All right. Well, you got us started. Very much so. Thanks for calling in. Patricia from New York, I would be interested in what you think about this. Why is there a specific targeted campaign? I mean, it's a targeted campaign. They rolled out the Rolls Royce here to say we are making a very special effort to educate this community about the benefits of this vaccine.
Good afternoon, Teresa, and good afternoon to the PRN family.
Thank you. You too.
This vaccine, Ed is absolutely correct. This vaccine is not like anything we have ever had before. And so Ed's explanation about this being, send him up. Ed's explanation about the vaccine being something that is going to create the ability of your body to produce a protein that will attack the coronavirus. This has never been tested in humans. It has been tested in animals, but never in humans. And so all of these people who are clamoring to get the vaccine, whether they are aware of it or not, will be the first generation of human guinea pigs. And it's going to take about a year to 18 months before we begin to see. And even when we see, it's going to be difficult to make the correlation, if you can, between the vaccine and whatever adverse effects you see. Now, this is the conundrum. I am a healthcare practitioner. Were I still in clinical practice, I would be bound by whatever guidelines comes out from the CDC. If you're listening, what they're saying is because there's such reluctance in the African American community to take this vaccine, that the African American community should rely on those individuals that they trust, i.e., African American and Latinx healthcare workers. So the Latin American, the healthcare workers of color, the providers of color, they are going to be forced to promote this vaccine on the very community that really should not be the community that should be taking it. And that is the conundrum. The first generation of human guinea pigs is underway. And the people who are going to expose the community, the black and brown community, to this are going to be black and brown providers. It's awful.
Well, why aren't we hearing objections? I mean, larger objections. We hear from one person here, one person there, but there seems to be no community, African American and Latino community protest about this. Why?
Well, first of all, they have already co-opted the community that should be protecting us, which is the communities of color. Black institutions were involved in this. You've got the Black civil rights organizations promoting this. You've got people who we should be able to rely on to protect us promoting this. So who is the community supposed to listen to when all of these respected individuals are supporting this?
Is there, at this point, a kind of standoff in this regard where you have one group of people, although they basically are from the same family tree, but one group of people who are credentialed, who are viewed as authorities on the subject, trusted, clearly acceptable to the Biden administration and the administrators and so forth, up against a skeptical, people use all kinds of words to say that folks are not buying it the way we thought that they should. But given the history of medicine and how it has been used on Black people, on Latinos, on people of color in general, why is it being seen now as if the willingness to go along with the program is something of an anomaly here? There's no reason to.
I'm so sorry. I am hearing that if anyone voices an opinion if anyone voices opposition to this vaccine, that they are going to be excoriated. The pressure to go along with this is intense. As a matter of fact, even online, they're taking down sites that are trying to inform people, provide information to people about this vaccine. They're taking them off the World Wide Web. If somebody like me, who was a clinical provider, if I would be alone in my opposition or just even questioning to this, I would be alone.
But Dr. Fauci is such a nice, well-meaning man. Why would you target him? Why would you say, I am not satisfied with too many things that any typical scientist should immediately question, and I am not satisfied also about the fact that they are ignoring completely the rational reaction. If you look at the history of people who have been put at odds with the whole intention of public health, they've never really been the beneficiaries of it. And so they instruct ensuing generations, go easy, don't accept anything as true until you study it properly. And now millions of dollars are being poured into this public relations effort and this outreach effort to assure people. They're putting black faces all over the place in positions of power and whatnot and influence, and essentially communicating, you have no reason now, and you have a far more liberal president-elect. What is your problem now?
People are not thinking this through. The FDA advisory panel is meeting today to look at the data and to decide whether they should make a decision to approve this vaccine. However, the media campaign to accept the vaccine has already been in effect for over a month before
Correct.
the FDA advisory panel even looked at the data. So what are we talking about?
Correct.
They've already got the data. They've already got the vaccine made and distributed, and the FDA has not looked at one stitch of data. They've looked at data that the company provided them with. The company. How many times a day do you see commercials on TV for lawsuits around medicines and medical devices that the FDA approved that are now harming people? The fact that and even if the advisory panel approves it, how many of these medications and devices have the FDA approved that have harmed people? What difference does it make whether they approve it? People still get harmed. The problem is the harm isn't identified until years later.
So why don't we hear?
Companies are shielded from liability if anybody is harmed.
So why don't we hear this from the African American, Latino establishment leadership?
You're not going to hear it. You're not, Latrice, you're not going to hear it. They are afraid of opposing Dr. Fauci and company. You're not going to hear it.
Okay. Do you think that the administration will ever complete? It isn't even acknowledging the past And there's so much to help them prove the point that they understand the reticence of these two major communities to get involved with a vaccine. The history, the medical history of inflicting harm on these communities could fill many, many books. So why is it that they're acting as if, we're going to ignore that? We just we're starting
the
from
narrative,
this point. This is where history starts.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I'm hearing what the narrative is going to be. The narrative is going to be that we acknowledge that historical things have been done to your community, but this is different. That's the narrative. We acknowledge that sins have occurred in the past, but we are not. But we're not sinning. We're not sinning this time. This is different. That's the narrative that's coming.
Right. The past is past, and you can kind of forget it. But now we have a bright future.
That's correct. That's going to be the narrative, and they're going to use black and brown providers to do this, and black and brown faces to do this. I'm already hearing it.
Well, thank you, Patricia. Some really keen insights that will help us put things in perspective. You see, when things are just presented to us out of the blue, and we have no historical context, we have no insider's view, we are very much likely to go along with the program. But until people like you are able to explain to us what really is happening and revive the legitimacy of resistance until we find out just what this is. But so far, you've made some very important points. We do not see people, black and brown people, who are qualified scientists, who are allowed to explain in detail their concerns about this virus and about this vaccine. We're not hearing anything except there's going to be a vaccine. Yay! Get ready. Roll up your sleeves, because we're trying to get you better and save you from the coronavirus. No, you have to stop and think. We have a history to point to that should instruct us that a position of wait, let us hear some more, let us examine some more, is perfectly logical. And we should not be pressured to move along at anybody else's pace. Thanks so much. We'll take this break and come back to the issue at hand right after this. You're listening to Leid Stories on PRN.FM, and we are in the midst of a discussion on why yesterday, when they rolled out this new vaccine, and when there was such an effort made to communicate a particular concern for the African American and Latino communities, automatically it should have flipped a switch in your head to say, well, wait a minute. Everybody has coronavirus. What is the special outreach that African Americans and Latinos need with respect to the virus? What is it? And of course, the answer is you'll find the rationale in history. The history of medical, what should I say, crimes committed against these two particular communities, particularly the African American community. And so it is natural if people have even a little bit of the sense of what medicine, the role of medicine and medical, quote, developments in these two communities that were used largely as experimental communities. They didn't care what the effects were, and some people still are the examples of what it is I'm talking about. You know, the syphilis experiments and so forth. We have a long list. It's almost depressing to recite it, but we have a long list of governmental inflicted harm. And so it is natural. It is a natural reaction, and I think a form of self-protection that they don't just absorb and take in these, you know, bells and whistles that accompany the big sell. Don't think about that. Think first and remember and recall first what the history of the government has been in our communities, the consequences that these two particular communities have paid, plus the Native American communities. We keep forgetting them all the time. But yesterday they rolled out the new vaccine, which they're hoping to just saturate the African American and Latino communities with. But they're not so satisfied with the lack of enthusiasm. And I'm saying it's a good thing to not be too enthusiastic about this and to think about it as many people are. And that's what we're talking about today. George from Westchester, you're on the air. All right. Chris from West Palm Beach, you're on the air.
Utrice, good afternoon. How are you?
All right. Thank you. Thanks for calling in.
All right. Yes, I turned in today because I heard the discussion was on the vaccine. So, my red flags are popping up like crazy. We've reached a point to where collective ignorance and reluctance to consider information from independent sources is now back to bite us all in the butt. What I mean by this is that there is so much information in the world about this virus, and the conversation, they put the parameters around the conversation to keep us focused only on the virus when this is about so much more than just the virus. In fact, I'm even in, I don't know if this thing is even quote unquote real, because one, influenza totally disappeared. I'm trying to figure out where that went. Those numbers are non-existent. There's been so many cases of them just outright lying and being sloppy about it. Furthermore, there's another reluctance to look into people such as an institution, such as the CDC, such as Anthony Fauci, such as Tedros from the World Health Organization, such as Drs. Redfield and Birx and their connections with AIDS and this PCR test and the interpretation of the results. All of this information is out there, and very few want to look at it, much less when they hear it. They reject it because it's not from their pre-approved source that they are comfortable hearing information from. So all year, I've just been watching everyone fall victim to the nonsense, and now here we are. I'm not taking this. I'm not about to put it in my kid. What am I going to do? I don't know. I will tell you this much. They've never done anything for black people in regards to our health. It's only been to harm us. So when I see Bill Gates, de Blasio, Cuomo, Barack Obama, all saying black people need to take this should be a wake-up call to everybody. Like, hold on. They don't do anything good or nice for us first. Now we're being considered amongst the top group to get this. I mean, people really need to wake the hell up and need to start being more defiant, quite honestly.
All right. Thank you very much for contributing today. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Let's go to Henry from Chicago.
Hey, Utrice, how's it going?
Okay. How's by you?
All right. Well, the last caller kind of touched on part of what I was going to say in regards to when has this government ever sincerely been concerned about the health of black and brown people? And I can't really point to any situation. Now, they would acknowledge it But as far as, trying to solve the issues, which are a plethora of health issues within the Black and brown community, there was no real action towards it. So when it comes to this virus, and you mentioned when it comes to this vaccine, and you mentioned the historical aspect of experiments that have been done on, Black people, I turned to a book called Medical Apartheid. And I think that was something that, you were trying to think of what to call this. And I think that's the perfect thing to call it. And it was written by a Black woman who was a Harvard medical researcher named Harriet A. Washington. And if you want to look at detailed information on vaccine trials, specifically for African American people that have gone wrong and that have not been reported to the Office of Ethical Standards, you need to read this very much detailed information of a lot of historical things that have been done as far as vaccine trials, as far as other things, and you probably know this, Utrice, about, the birth of gynecology. Dr. Marion J. Sims, who was experimenting on black women slaves, and so this is what we get as far as Black people being guinea pigs for the rest of the world. And obviously, there is a defiance of white people who are not going to take this vaccine, but you don't hear a call for, white people to come take the vaccine. So, why is it just us?
Is it possible that despite all the things that you've pointed out, is it possible that this one time it's a genuine moment where the government is trying to do a good thing and to really look out for the interests, the health interests of these two particular communities? Why is it that you automatically assume that it's not?
No, it's not, because as Patricia had pointed out, and she's one of my favorite callers, is that the data, they're not presenting the data in a correct fashion. They're propping up black medical professionals, and, no shade to them, but they're propping them up, in front of the public to say, hey, we should do this more. But the data is not being presented in a correct way where we can make a logical decision to say, okay, maybe I will take it. But other than that, they're not giving us the whole truth about it. All they're just saying is we need to be more willing to take this vaccine because it's a pandemic.
Good point. Thank you. Thanks a lot. I was going to say, call you Chris. Henry, thank you so much for calling in and contributing today. Mike from Florida, you're on the air.
Mike from Florida. Mike from Florida.
Yes, you're on the air.
Okay, thank you, Utrice, for taking my call. Second time in my life I'm calling you after New York and your work with the City Sun. It's once in a blue moon I do get to talk to you. Thank you very much for Ed and Patricia and everybody who has, told it like it's supposed to be told. Black people are going to be evicted from their homes and their apartments. Nobody has come up to pay up the rent up front so that black people are not homeless. All of a sudden, we want to give you the vaccine. We got bills to pay, electrical bills, phone bills, rent, all of these things, food. The lines in Florida are all over the place. What about coming up with a master plan for the household living? You want to jump over all of that and give us a vaccine, Utrice? This is crazy. And remember when you were talking about how the devastation in the black community has been so pervasive and it went down and down.
We're getting a lot of interference on your line, but we'll muddle through. Go right ahead. Just wanted you to know.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that when we had all of the devastation in the black community that you spoke about with the virus all these months, and it was left to, ravage the black and brown community. And then all of a sudden now, oh, well, we can save you now. You've been hit so hard. So we have the solution. Problem, reaction, solution. It's a setup. The playbook has not changed. Let it ravage the black and brown community. They're desperate already. They're going to be homeless. They're hungry. And now we give them the vaccine and we give them a bribe, a couple $100. Hey, take the vaccine. This is good for you. Or maybe they're going to say, well, you can't get food stamps unless you take the vaccine. You can't get your unemployment extension unless you take the vaccine. It's all part of the master plan. I ain't taking it, and I hope nobody takes it. And thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution today. Ali from New York, how are you doing? You're on the air.
Yes, thank you, Utrice. Thank you for taking my call today. And I just wanted to say hello to all the audience, all the people that are listening to you. A lot of the things that I wanted to say, it has been said already. I just thought about Harriet Washington, and people should, even if you don't read her book, go inside, go to Google her name and see some of the interview, because she has so many examples of racism in medicine. It's just incredible. As a matter of fact, I do have her book, but if you don't want to read it, just go ahead and just download her and listen to the interviews. And I also wanted to say,
Hold it for 1 second. Could you just repeat the name of the author and the name of the book that you just said?
Henry gave the name of the book. I forgot the name of the book right now. I can't really think of it, but her name is Harriet, and Harriet, like Harriet Tubman, and the last name is Washington. Okay. And there is a lot of that you could just download, and you could see on YouTube some of her interviews. And I'm going to tell you, there is one example that she talks, and I think it's in one of her interviews, that she talks about when she was doing a research, how she found all these records, and she was very and everyone was black, but then she found one white woman. And the reason that she found the white woman on those records was because she was married to a black man. And I always said this to my husband, and as you know, he's Caucasian, and I always tell him, when you marry somebody black, you become part of that community. And that's what happened to that lady. But I also wanted to say a few more things.
Yes.
You guys, I hope that some of the people remember that 2 French doctors, when they were talking about the vaccine, they wanted to go to Africa to have the trial there. I hope that some people remember that they wanted to go to Africa to try the vaccine on black people. So people should get that into their head, that they wanted to use us. It's not the first time. People talk about the experiment, the Tuskegee, the Guatemalan natives, and also the Puerto Ricans, how they have used us as an experimentation on the drugs. So people should really, really think about it. And like your last caller said, if they really wanted, when did the United States government really wanted to help people of color? Think about Bill Gates, what Bill Gates is saying. He wants to have a reduction. He talks about human population, how he wants to bring the number lower. Bill Gates is using what this woman has as a shock doctrine, and then they wanted to use this vaccine against us. People should listen to some of his interviews, and he said on his with his own words coming from his mouth. And the gentleman who called before, and he talks about eviction. How about stopping the eviction? How about giving people a house to stay? You know how many, especially you're talking about Black African America, that they wanted to give the vaccine? How about giving African American a place to stay that the homeless in New York City? How about stopping rezoning and not taking us from our community to send us to we don't know where? And then the Bronx has the most problem with asthma that any other place. So this is the kind of thing that people should think about it. So now they're looking to better ourselves to give us the vaccine. No way. Don't take it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Ali, for your call. Let's see who's up next. Gino from the Bronx, you're on the air.
Good day, Utrice.
Hello.
Just to add
How
on
are
to
you?
Ali, thank you. That what happened in Africa, she left off. They were vaccinating for one thing, but it was making many of the people infertile. And it was a French doctor who spilled the beans on it, so they stopped it. So that's the continuation on that. I remember that very well. If I could just jazz freeform a little bit on why people should be wary about it. First of all, somebody said the other day, one of your callers, it might have been Patricia, and if they're so sure about the vaccine, let them remove that clause in 1986 showing that if anybody gets damaged or dies, that we, the taxpayer, have to pay. They should allow the companies that sound so sure of themselves to pay for the damages. That right there will show a lot more faith in what they're doing, which I doubt very much they're going to do, but that would be something to offer up to alleviate people's concerns. Other things, Gulf War, all those vaccines experimental with those soldiers, all illegal weapons, chemical weapons that were blown up, people forget. Hundreds of thousands of medical reports on the conditions of those soldiers disappeared, says Schwarzkopf. They don't know what happened to it. As far as going back, it's what you say is very true. We need to keep a perspective, an historical perspective, to see the whole picture. The blankets with the Indians, the Tuskegee, but not so long ago with autism, there was a conscientious scientist who reported on the phone, taped the doctor, that autism was very, very high in black boys. And it used to be 1 out of 20,000. It was showing 1 out of 25 because they were giving it to them earlier, up until 2 years, and they shredded that information. That was revealed on Gary's show about 5 years ago. That's very recent. As far as other issues, 45,000 Americans die without having health care, can't afford it. That's a year, 45,000. That would be a way to show we care for Americans.
But Gino,
yeah.
I wanted you to come up to the present moment. Why is there such an emphasis on the applicability of the vaccine in African American and Latino communities? Why?
Again,
why not?
Historical perspective. People were enslaved. You think a magic wand went over these white people's heads? I speak as a white person. You think a magic wand went over these people's heads and they become enlightened and caring for people? They've been involved with 40 years of fake wars. Why would they care about bombing women and children? Why would they care about black Americans? They don't. They're not their neighbors for the most part. The last play of August Wilson's shows, mostly intelligentsia, sold out, like white intelligentsia, most of them. And we don't have many people speaking up for us. There was an African doctor who spoke out about how that Corazine was working. She was on the air a couple of months ago, and it's very, very cheap with the zinc and the other thing. This is like was said. This is a new procedure going into the DNA, changing it around. Fauci was involved with the AZT, which was a failed cancer treatment. It was giving people secondary cancers. They took it off the shelf and gave it to people with acquired immune deficiency. That's really smart. And they were dying from toxic livers. So why? Well, listen, in Germany, those people were white that were killed by doctors. There was the first people killed in Nazi Germany were Germans who were white by psychiatrists and doctors. People should remember this. If this is done, white people can do that to white people, and black people are not looked upon too favorably in this country. It's no big secret. There's not that many enlightened people. I would be very, very cautious with that. And on another note, Denmark, they protested for 1 week that the government could not force vaccinations. I hope all of us talking on the radio comes the time to get out there and support Robert Kennedy and people like Daniel Sheehan, lawyers for the people. We get out there, and Gary will be out there. We get out there and get off the phone, and we get out there and protest. The Corbett report last note, he did a whole thing on Bill Gates, who introduced vaccines into Africa.
Don't go there. Don't go there. We have a program. We have a subject that we're discussing. Please don't divert from the program. Stay with us.
It's all connected, Utrice. Don't separate it. That's how they win. It's all connected.
Yes, I know that, but
That's what I'm doing.
This is a program that I'm doing, and there should be continuity. We're not endorsing anybody. We're not recommending anybody be elected. We're not doing any of that. We're trying simply to understand and share our views. That's what we're trying to do. Thanks for calling and contributing
today. Report will share about Gates.
Thank you for calling and contributing. Is Michelle still on the line from New York? Oh, okay. All right. We still have, we're almost out of time, but we still have room for a call or two. 888-874-4888 is the number to call. These are questions, they're fundamental, as you can see. You can see the reaction, and yet these questions manage to elude major media. Why is there such a major concern about African American and Latino communities? I'm not suggesting there shouldn't be, but this was rolled out with great pomp and circumstance, and you always immediately you react. This is not normal. So we're asking, why was it made to be abnormal? Why was this extraordinary amount of attention brought? Why is the public being conditioned to understand that this administration, a more humane administration from the one that was there before, is taking a new tact and trying to be more inclusive and more responsive to communities of color, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just the same, we do have a historical memory, and it should inform our automatic need for other kinds of information to balance things out. But we're not getting it. And you should ask the questions. Why? Why is there such an extraordinary effort being made to reach these two communities? Is it because Joe Biden loves us more than Donald Trump? Is it because that the medical community is more interested right this minute in the health of African American, Latino people as opposed to 10 years ago or 5 years ago? No, it's not as simplistic as that. Something else is happening here, and it is causing the administration and the people who are in charge of leading the way to a new day in health. There's confluence of interest, and they, as of yesterday, they officially launched this aggressive program to get these two communities targeted for the vaccine. Thanks so much for listening and contributing your thoughts today. I really appreciate it. We come back to each other tomorrow, which is Free Your Mind Friday. As you know, the airwaves will belong to you. You get to talk about whatever it is you want to talk about. But that's tomorrow. Bye-bye.